They were a little bit of a surprise because, as you're aware, there's been a very strong vocal women's campaign against the use of mesh, and increasingly so with other areas as well. So not just in vaginal prolapse and continence mesh. So I was expecting a little bit more detail as to where mesh would fit into the treatment of incontinence and prolapse. And from what I can see of the guidance, it doesn't stipulate it's really moved anywhere. It seems to be in exactly the same position it was in before. Particularly women after they've had children can develop problems with what's known as pelvic organ prolapse or urinary stress incontinence. And the operations that were available to women before did not involve mesh. And then mesh came along and it was seen as a much easier device to put in and much quicker, and the outcomes initially looked very good. But most of them hadn't been studied long term, so we didn't have really long-term outcome data, and many of the patients then developed problems as a consequence of having them in. So there are some patients in whom there isn't an alternative, and mesh may be the only answer. But in the vast majority of women, you do need to go back to basics. So that means physiotherapy, losing weight, etc., and then looking at other options of surgery should you need them. So it can be offered, but I just think it needs to be offered much further down the line, given the fact that we now know there are problems with the product. In part of our training, we were always expected to use it, and in fact it was stipulated that to maintain your accreditation you needed to use it, and so many of us have used it in the past. Currently I don't use it, mainly because I think I've found increasingly I'm looking after women with so many complications that it just became something I don't recommend at this stage.